Welcome to World Childless Week. And today we're talking about embracing the identity of oneness, even though it sucks sometimes. And why are we going to talk about sex, intimacy, and singleness? Well, because it's a challenging topic to talk about, perhaps even more challenging than the general topic of do you have kids and why we do or don't, or whatever that's all about. And it's also because Catherine-Emmanuelle and I, who have had recently 3 or 4 different Zoom conversations about sex and being single and intimacy and being single. And they have been fascinating conversations, really dynamic, sometimes difficult, and always very, very, very interesting and energizing. And so we wanted to do that with you today in World Childless Week, because we want to own our space as childless, not by choice singles. And we also want to model what a conversation like this can look like so we can start to have more and more of those conversations. So I met Catherine-Emmanuelle. It seems like I've known her my whole life, which is kind of impossible because we have an age gap. But I believe I met her in person back in 2015 at the first Not Mom conference in Cleveland. Thank you, Karen Malone, right? But Kathleen, can you introduce yourself and tell everybody who you are and why?
Yes, so I'm Catherine-Emmanuelle Delisle. I'm the creator of femmesansenfants.com. So I live in Quebec, the French part of Canada. So that's why you can hear a little accent of mine during this conversation today. And I created Femmes Sans Enfants because I wanted desperately to meet women like me. And I had no clue at that time this would bring me to meet women from all over the world, which is really fantastic. And now also I'm a therapist using the CNDA way, which is not an approach that is really well known across Canada because it's a Montreal-based approach. And it's a humanistic approach that tends to work in creating a strong relationship with the patient and to helping the patient grow through empathetic approach. So yeah, so basically that's who I am.
Okay. And I'm Kate Kaufman, and I live in Portland, Oregon. And I am the author of Do You Have Kids? Life When the Answer's No, which I wrote because, like Catherine-Emmanuelle, I was looking for people like me, and I wanted to know what my life might unfold like after I learned through infertility that I was not going to have children. And so I got a chance to talk to women from their 20s to their 90s about all the different ways that life is impacted by not having kids. And it has been the most amazing, wonderful, healing, illuminating experience, truly, of my entire life. I'm 69 and a half years old. I was married for 34 years and had a late life divorce about 5-6 years ago. And then have tried for a couple, 3 years to put myself out in the dating world, which I know we'll talk about in a little while. So this whole thing about sex and intimacy, I will say, infertility treatment wrecked my sex life. And so it's like this whole other aspect of being in the world. So that's who I am. And
I just realized I didn't talk about an important part of my life is that actually I'm a 45-year-old woman, and I've been in relationships before, but most of my life I have been experiencing my life as a single woman. And I'm very passionate about that and very interested to talk about that, because we don't hear very often what unpartnered women, childless women, have to say about this. And this is why we wanted so dearly to talk about this during Childless Week, right?
Exactly. And it just occurred to me just now with we've got 24 years difference. You could be my daughter. Oh, but you're my friend, and that's even better. You're my chosen family. So there. So one of the things that we did as we started to talk about this was to talk about, it sucks sometimes being a single childless woman. And so we're just going to do like a popcorn, all the different ways that it sucks. So Catherine-Emmanuelle, why does it suck being a single woman?
Well, you just wanted to unpack it, because not to minimize it, actually, like we cannot sometimes afford vacations because they're not cheap, because we're not partnered. So this is one thing. What do you think?
Well, yeah, and then you either you pay a pretty hefty supplement to go by yourself, or if you want to put yourself into the pool of, oh yeah, well, I'll just have a stranger that's a roommate, and the stranger that's your roommate could be super strange. So.
And then there's those bad comments like, so why are you single? Actually, this weird look. So we have to deal with that. So this kind of sucks in the long term, really.
Yeah, and we're kind of looked at as kind of pitiful, but also as kind of a threat. Like, don't be moving in on my partner just because you don't have one, which is icky. I mean, it's just icky.
Yeah, and it feels also like sometimes people want to fix us. Like there's something is supposed to be broken about us. So suggesting some solutions or etc. So like, have you been online, or all that crap.
Yeah, and here's a brilliant way that you can go hook up with someone, and so you don't have to just go to the bars. Here, this is how I met my person, and blah 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 blah. And then you get to go out to dinner by yourself if you want to ever go out to dinner, if you don't want to just stay home. And then you can sit in a really crappy table and kind of look at other people in conversation. And then I always make sure I have a really good book with me, so then I can keep myself entertained.
And sometimes it feels like there's no motivation to do cooking because you're on your own. This is another thing we have to consider, which can feel like a burden at sometimes.
Yeah, and I think also it's one of the things that I've found that really sucks, and particularly after being married for a long time. I mean, it's like all these couples dinners, and you go to a couples dinner until you create this odd number, and it's pretty hard to have a conversation at the dinner table that includes stuff that's not all coupley, and that I actually feel like I'm showing up with my own interests.
Yeah. And also there's housing expenses that are very higher for us, really, because we're on our own. And this kind of suspension mode we're in, like we're waiting for something. This is kind of hard to handle, really, on a daily basis.
Yeah, and we haven't even talked about the sex part yet, but we're going to talk about that a little bit. But I'm feeling like if I don't just say this, then I'll be being a little hypocritical. Mm-hmm. But it's also really hard, even in the childless not by choice community, and with child free, we often get drowned out by those who are partnered, and the conversation can get taken over about what coupledom is like. So,
and there's also finally the lack of physical presence, tenderness, and impossibility to cuddle, and like, face it, it's kind of hard at some point, really.
That's really true, and you can embrace yourself. And sometimes that's a little challenging to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, so let's talk about like reframing now that we've acknowledged some of the ways that it can suck. And we were kind of talking about how we reframe our relationship with ourselves. And I know that you have had a lot of opportunity to think about how we can look at our own bodies and the impact of that psychologically.
Yeah. Yes, I had to explore this theme because part of my story is that I experienced early menopause at the age of 14. So at that time, this was very traumatic for me, but how I dealt with it is to suppress it. And then when I came around 35, I just had to face it because I was like everybody around me was having children, and I was facing the fact I would never have children because adoption was not in a thing I wanted to experience in my life. So so the rapport with my body was kind of triggering, because actually what it felt like it was a defective body very early on. I think women that experience infertility have that same feeling, experience the same feeling. But what was my experience is that I had to bottle it up for so long. And then I had to really process the fact that I had to accept the shame that was attached to that relationship with my body, because it was a shame really to have a defective, in my way of seeing, a defective body. So this has had an impact really on my the way I approach men. It has an impact. It had an impact on my self-confidence, on my, even I can say, on my sexual drive, and so the way your body functions or doesn't function as a woman can be very, very triggering and affect deeply your self-esteem, which was my case.
Mm-hmm. And I remember hearing you tell your story and being so struck with, okay, here's this wise woman who has lived for so many years and starting out as a teenager with this knowledge, and how some of the rest of us, we discover it over the course of years what our lives are going to be like. Mm-hmm. And so I think that does give you a kind of in an odd way, kind of a head start, and something that I've always appreciated about the way and the frankness that you have as a result of knowing it so very early. Yeah. And my relationship with my own body, yeah, the infertility stuff was really challenging, and the estrangements and the sex on demand and all this weird icky stuff. Mm-hmm. And then to find myself from a kind of dwindling physical relationship with the person that I was married to being completely on my own. And then we go into pandemic. And what I found that was kind of a sanity thing for a relationship with myself as a vital woman in the world, and I identify as female, was to come up with this idea of dating myself. And figuring out things that I wanted to do and like to do. And I realized today, just even getting ready for this conversation, I was using some of the same things. Like I put on a little fancier thing. It's got lace on it, right? And I put on some nice things, and I made my hair all mussy and kind of a little, whatever. And that matters. That helps. And in dating myself, I would decide, what do I actually really want to do? And I'd go on a hike, or I'd take myself to the beach, or during the pandemic, I only did this maybe a handful of times. And every time I did it, it worked great. But I would have like dance party night with myself. And sometimes I'd cook myself a nice dinner, which, I mean, really, how often do we cook a nice dinner for ourselves? But I did. And I would get dressed up and I would dance and open the window so anybody could see me dancing if they wanted to. And it lifted my spirits and made me actually feel, and still does make me feel, kind of like I'm in my body, in relation with myself, falling in love with myself. I actually feel.
It feels like what's striking me is that you're not functioning in comparison with what would be the experience if you would be in a couple. You are perfectly owning all the experience by yourself and enjoy it. But before you can come up to that, I think for me, there needs to be a grieving space. Grieving brings you to accept the fact that you are single. And to accept the fact that you are single for a long time is very, very challenging. Mm-hmm. Childless women, because childless women actually don't fit the models. So they don't have a spouse. Some of them don't even have a pet, and they don't have children. So what's in it for them in life? So there needs to be a space to come to terms with that. I feel, to be able to embrace, like you, this space of oneness, and as vibrantly as you are, which is so inspiring for me, really.
Well, as you are for me, it's this acceptance of the potential for, I think you've referred to it as chronic singlehood. Yep. Is that we can wait for this magic time when we become coupled, but truth of the matter is, and this is something that's really struck me as I've gotten older, and finally I'm starting to own my elderhood, which I don't really know how old I am, so it's a really hard thing to kind of wrap my own head around. But this idea of aging as a single person, I mean, all of us are gonna be on our own as we make our transition into whatever the heck comes after this life. And so to a certain extent, I can see how being single, being childless, being in the world on our own is really a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful training for becoming fully vibrant elders. And that has only very recently occurred to me. And so I think, I got a big dose of that when my marriage ended. It's like, okay, wait a minute, I got to plan for my own self-care in a way I had never done before. And that involved, all the legal stuff, like filling out all the papers and deciding. I mean, I was terrified to ask people to play roles in my elderhood. And just to share that, I mean, it took me, I wrote down, like, here's my A team and here's my fallback position. And then I was like tongue-tied. I mean, I even had a script that someone else told me, the woman I interviewed for the book. It's like, okay, what am I going to even say to these people? And I was like, I just kind of wanted to ask. I mean, I was like, I know how to speak, but I was completely tongue-tied because I was asking these people to do something for me. And in every case, my A team is all assembled. In every single person I talked to, all four of them, because everybody's sharing roles, which was something they all wanted to do, they ended up asking me, like, are you asking me to play a role in your end of life plan? He's like, I am, and it's okay if you want to say no. And they go, oh, of course I'm going to do it for you. And so it was that act of me acknowledging I actually am on my own and I want to take care of myself and I want people I trust to surround me instead of just avoiding it and pushing it off. And that was a huge way of just accepting and underscoring the fact that I am a single woman in the world and damn it, I'm taking care of myself.
Yeah, embracing it, but taking responsibility around
exactly.
it, which is very, very, very important, because we can become victims, kind of victims of what happens or what is not happening in our lives. So when we just, like you said, take decisions, then we start to act on it and to create what we want to have in our lives, really, as childless women and single women.
Yep. And then you know, we come from from our universe of self, and then we have these relations with others that, you know, I think the way you said it one time was the to have sex or not to have sex, that is the question. And then the question that you added to that, which just cracked me up, was and then to be in relationship or not. And as we shift over into the more sexy kind of talk too, I had meant to talk about on my dating night of self. This was one of the first things that you and I talked about that was awkward to talk about. It's like the whole concept of self-pleasuring, masturbation, and what's your physical relationship with yourself. That's partially why I dress up a little bit too, you know, is that one of my jobs as an elder is to become kind of the unabashed, I'm going to speak out. And it is, I mean, it's a way we have relationship and kind of retake our own bodies as we choose how and whether we're going to take them out into the world with other people.
Or not.
Yeah. And the fear. I know you the whole thing about fear and how to transform fear into more vitality.
Well, actually, there's, as we slip to the relationship with other questions, really, is I think for a lot of childless single women, after a while being single, it can become frightening to try to go back in a relationship, especially if you didn't experience long-term relationships. For example, like me, I've experienced multiple relationships, but short periods of relationships. And then it's kind of regarded when you try to get in a relationship as a problem. Like, what's the problem with you? You could have a long-term relationship? Well, I know for lots of women, they just haven't met the right person multiple times, which creates this background or history of non-relationship. And we can carry this baggage with shame. And this could be preventing us from going forward to go in a relationship. And it can be tricky at the time.
Yes, and then coming from the other side of being in a long-term marriage, you know, on reflection now, I can see many points in that whole 34 years that probably would have been the wise place to have accepted and included the fact that this was not working well. And yet the fear of going out on my own was really kind of terrifying. and so to do it, what was I, 66 when the final, get the finalizing of being separated for a while all came to be. And then to just kind of sit with, okay, so I have this history, this we history, and now I'm building my me history. And what occurred to me and was really powerful, and I said something about to myself, or I said it to someone else about, I'm actually an undiluted person. I come to my relationships whole now. I'm not like, trying to meld into, merging with another and what all of their issues are. But instead, I'm walking into my friendships and doing this kind of work that you and I do in the world. I am undiluted. I am fully here. I don't have people that are pulling me every which way that I need to be responsible to. And what I've found that's done for me is that the love of self, which truly I was blown away. I was like, oh my God, I'm in a love relationship. It's with me. But that now that gives me a way to offset that influence that comes, when you meet someone that has potential, instead of giving myself away and trying to be who I think this person might enjoy me being, because I'm pretty good at shape shifting. Instead, it's like, yeah, I'm actually a catch, and maybe I haven't been caught in the way that I'm hoping to be caught, and maybe I never will, but I have me, I've caught myself. And so then I'm under less influence of what another might want me to be.
Yeah.
So that makes sense?
Yeah, it does, because it sounds like you're free, actually. Free from the stigmas, what people expect of you. It seems like that to me.
Well, I think I'm still trying it on, but yeah.
In a different way, with a different mindset, actually, is what I can see.
Yeah, because we have the license and the space to actually create and craft the lives that we want, which, we didn't talk about that as one of the things that sucks, but it's also one of the things that's awesome, is we can create. We have so many options, which sometimes can be overwhelming.
Yeah.
And also kind of go, yes, no, no.
So. Yes, and in that creation, there's something I want to talk about that shifted for me in relationships during the time as I did my grieving process. Because at first I wanted to meet a man who had children. I really, really wanted to experience that life, even though they were not my biological children. And then as I grieved and the years passed, I realized at one point I wanted to experience a relationship with a man that was free, like me, free of everything. Because I wanted to invest. I was about to say all my time, but not all my time. No. I wanted to invest part of my time in a relationship where we could grow together without kind of interruptions, really. Of course, we're interrupted by tons of things like work and whatever life throws at us. But this mindset of my way of seeing relationships has evolved. And I really, truly, Kate, I did not think that would happen, that shift. I never thought I would say that.
I'm so happy you brought that up, because I've dated, I guess, 3 people more than a couple, 3 times, for a period of months, maybe. And each of those men, because I'm identify as heterosexual as well, each of those men has kids. And I've noticed in the evolution of those 3 relationships, if you will, that at first I was like, oh, your children always come first, and I will be in the, I will be there in the best way that I can, but I support you in that primary role. And then what I found is what I was doing is then I got very doormatty, kind of like, oh no, well, where's my space? And I couldn't figure it out. And the most recent encounter, it's like, well, damn it, I'm actually here as, again, that undiluted woman, that undiluted person. I am here, and you have your family life. I have my family of the heart. We can intersperse those as makes sense for us to do. And what you and I have as a couple is something that is altogether different. It's separate. It's also in the world. And it's not a hierarchy. I think that has been so powerful to just go, it's not a hierarchy. And if you, Mista, see me as somehow a lesser person and a lesser woman because I don't have kids, then you're not the person for me. And the moment that I made that decision, regardless if it was someone I was seeing multiple times or even once, it was like, oh, I see you as from their point of view, it's like I became a much more interesting, viable, valuable kind of a person to date because I wasn't diluted. It's like, ooh, this person I can do all sorts of things with this person.
Of course.
I'm the guy is the one who has the potential messiness, and it's up to him to figure out how he's going to manage his messiness.
Yeah.
And if you can't manage your messiness, then it's not going to work. And the other thing I wanted to say about that too is you bringing up the idea that we can learn and we can partner from people who are child free. And it took, that I think is a super delicate timing, because if you haven't gone through the grieving part of it, it's almost impossible to open the door to that whole way of being in the world. But my best friend, she chose not to have kids, and we never even really talked about it. And one day it's like, wait a minute, Elizabeth, you know how to be a child-free person in the world. You have skills that I want to acquire. And so it's been kind of the same thing in the dating world. When I meet men or women, actually, I would say friendship, I would take it beyond dating, to anything, to go, if I'm in the place to be able to ask some of these questions, about sex, about intimacy, about all this stuff, to people who have chosen not to have kids, it's like I get to learn these life skills and ways of being that I want to be more like that. And so I guess that kind of shifts us over to looking at how we create some kind of the mutual aid pacts, and this whole thing about aging and becoming more open and just being very frank about who we are and how we are in the world. I don't know. What do you think about that?
About aging and the fear of being alone in the elderhood, you mean? Or actually, when I talk to women about about being single, childless and single women, for them, there's something they fear in growing old. So this is, and I think they fear they will be alone, actually. The biggest fear for childless women and single women, I think, is to die alone, actually. And I discussed that with a dear friend of mine, Stephanie, quite often. And like, she told me recently, well, I think it would take 3 days for someone to find me if something would happen to me, because I live alone and I don't have any children. So there's kind of a fear, I think, attached to growing old and being single. The fear also of losing the physical capacities, the fear of not having someone there to help if we need it. So and for me, the antidote to those fears is really to plan. It's really to plan. And to plan means multiple things. Like you said, how did you call it before, your team? To plan to have your, how did you call it?
Oh, yeah. It's like this mutual aid pact that I was having lunch with some friends that play ukulele. These were some ukulele buddies. And it was like, hey, I looked around the table, like, hey, all of us are single. Why don't we just kind of build a pact with each other? I think we were actually talking about colonoscopies, if I'm remembering correctly. And it was like, okay, wait, how do we get someone to come pick us up after that? Because you're not supposed to drive yourself home by yourself. It's like, all right, you guys, let's just make a pact. Let's shake on it that we will go pick each other up. We will let each other know when we're going to do that. Yeah. And then not so long ago, someone in that pact, they said, oh yeah, I had to take my car in for service, and I had to go to this place, and I took my car in, and then I took 2 buses to come home, and then I'm going to take the 2 buses. It took me a couple of hours. I said, you're in this pact. I am going to go pick you up tomorrow to go back and get your car. You're not going to ride in 2 buses. Mm-hmm. You know, and it's like, I couldn't ask you to do that. It's like, yes, you have to ask me to do that because you're in the pact, first of all. Second of all, I'm going to do it because I want to do it. And it's not a hardship for me. It's actually a way I get to feel closer to you. And this is the kind of skill, as undiluted, independent people in the world, I think for aging purposes, because I've heard the same thing you have about this fear of dying alone. Well, that kind of comes on us. We have to learn now not to be as independent as time goes on. And we're doing this in this community. World Childless Week is all about connecting. So we get to ask for help. We have to ask for help because as we age, we're going to need help. It is guaranteed we're going to need help. And if we don't flex that muscle and we don't expose who we actually really are and what we actually really need, when those end days come, it's going to be really, really hard. It's going to be really hard. And I remember at the second Not Mom conference, I remember so clearly, I think we were, at the cocktail thing or whatever. Oh my God, that was a fun time. But I remember we started having that conversation. You and I were in a little circle and it was like, who's gonna hold my hand? And you said, I will never, ever forget this. You said, Kate, I'll hold your hand. And it just touched me so deeply. And I thought, I feel a connection to this person. We're not geographically desirable, connected in any way. But what you did is you showed me and you gave me this internal sense of a way I can be with others as well. And so I have an 88-year-old friend who she's child-free by choice, who lives in New Jersey, and she knows that I will get on a plane the moment she needs me, and I will go and I will be with her. And I have told her over and over and over again. And so now she just goes, yes, I will ask you. Yes, I will ask you. Yes, I will let you know. And so she knows that to be true. And because she's like 20 years older than I am, whatever. So she could be my mom, but she would be my mom of the heart, but she's actually like you, she's my friend. And it's friends do for each other. And so we, that web, like we have here in World Childless Week, that's how we do it. We can step up for one another. And I will tell you about sex. So I create this connection with her and we get to talk about sex. She's the one who introduced me to the idea. Is like, yeah, maybe you won't connect with someone as a, lifelong partner. I would have loved to have had a really healthy, intimate relationship for a long time. Didn't happen for me. So, I'm not doing it now, but I would have a lover a year or something. I'm like, whoa, I'm learning from an elder that it's okay to take a lover a year if I want, so that I just threw that in a bucket of possibilities. So that's me off for just going, I can't even picture what this is like. What was it like for you?
And I'm just amazed that the topic is still addressed. Because we think it's like, maybe it's because it's younger, but because I'm younger, but it feels like when you're growing old, there's no sex going on. And it's like, it's ridiculous. Like there's still sex, there's still intimacy, there's still desire. And I find this subject is not talked enough, really.
Well, and since we declared our intention to model what this conversation can look like, you and I have not talked about this. But I will tell you, one of my great shocks and joys was awakening to intimacy again. It's like, holy criminy, I have desire, I have passion. It's like owning my own sexual and sensual identity that has been just shocking to me. And then of course, when it's not there, when they break up with the person or something, then it's like, okay, but if the undercurrent is still present, and that blew my mind. I mean, it could be 70 years old in January. It's like, look at this. Nobody tells us about that. So there.
Well,
it's real.
Thank you for talking about it. Really, because nobody does.
Nobody does, but it's partially because we don't ask. Or it's partially because we don't volunteer. And that's something that we're not talking about aging right now, but we kind of are. It's like, that's what we need to do. And I'm going to keep talking to my older friends, women and men, because men talk about this stuff too. They care about it as well. And God, to be able to talk to guys about this kind of stuff.
That would be really, really interesting.
I know. Okay, so World Childless Week, men, come on, we want to hear from you on this sex thing, because we're all in this together. And I also do want to acknowledge, you and I are privileged white women sitting here and having our conversation. We are just starting to talk. And so you and I made the conscious decision we would do this one-on-one, because I think that's how a lot of these conversations happen. And we're having the larger discussion in Jody's crone group. And I mean, it's like we are at such a beautiful time right now, and we are not alone. And that's something that just, when I think about intimacy, that's the part that gets me, like, recognizing that we are all vital, and we are living amazing lives as we get to discover each other and learn that despite what anybody else might say, we are not alone. And you're a beautiful example of this. And I'm going to get a little choked up now, because we're in each other's lives forever. Right? We're not breaking up.
No, not.
Oh, Catherine. Okay, what do we have? What are we supposed to be doing now? calls to action ideas.
Yes. So
I have no idea how much time we've taken. So
I think we've been doing great. Yes, so we have a couple of minutes left, actually.
Okay, good.
So call to action. So you talked about your team. So that is something you planned really for yourself, for your old days. So this is really a call to action for me. Great example, really. And for me, call to action is really to, since if you are single and childless, your chosen family becomes very important in your life. So a call to action is for me to really choose carefully who you put in the center of your life. And when you're ready, you can bring someone else in that you want to create a relationship with, a romantic relationship. But for me, the center of my life at this point, I would say, would be my chosen family. Because I know my chosen family will always be there. I don't know if a partner will always be there. So of course, my sexual intimacy can be experienced with a partner, like a lover, but I can be fed on the other side of intimacy with all the other relationships in my life that won't be disappearing if I leave this lover or a boyfriend. So that has been and is still very important in my life, that I put my chosen family in really in the center of my existence as a pillar. I don't know how you feel about that.
I completely agree, and it's like a garden that we tend, and most of my chosen family now are I still have a lot of couples, married or partnered couples, and one of the things that is my own call to action is to do more of the kind of thing you and I are doing here. Is like, hey, here's what it's like to be single as a childless person, because a lot of my friends now, my closest friends, I think pretty much to a person, are childless or child-free, and to be able to say, hey, can we make a conscious effort to include sometimes that, yeah, okay, if you have kids, that we're not talking about your kids, that I ask for that now all the time. But even if you don't, can we also have time when we're not talking about couple stuff? Because then I disappear. I disappear in that, and I'm a listener, and I'm a great listener, but I can hide behind the listening. And I actually want to know other people, but I also want to be known. And so to step up and say, okay, yeah, and I'm just noticing that we're not including other single people at our holiday gatherings, for example. Let's start recruiting more single people to join in our gatherings. Who all do we know?
And to balance things and conversations, really.
Yeah.
So to feel more, in a way, included in the conversation. And I also find what is interesting is as the years went by, I realized there is more childless and child-free women in my circle than parents. And it's not like always a conscious choice. It just kind of happened. Like I'm calling this girl, and she has time to answer my phone calls. She has time to discuss things with me. She is not interrupted when she's talking to me. So these relationships become easier for us to manage, and it's easier to create, and we need to create intimacy when we're single, and it's intimacy at another level with friends, with elders, with our parents also, because my parents are really, really still very important in my life. So this level of intimacy is I think it's very important to create for our own sanity, really, physical and psychological sanity.
I love what you're saying there too, because I think that's one of the big takeaways for me is that if I look at intimacy as, oh, I've got to find my partner, that's kind of a setup for failure if it doesn't come to be. And, you know, sorry, I mean, it's pretty hard to make that kind of a prediction that it's going to happen that way. But there's no reason on earth why we can't create deeper, more honest and intimate relationships, even when they're just in passing. You know, when we show up as whole, child-free, not by choice. Or look what I just did. I even said the language. I said child-free, not by choice. Like what? Because it's starting to merge all together, and we can occupy our seat at every table. Even as single people, we are not less than. The only people that make us less than are ourselves.
And if intimacy with a partner is for you having a different partner every month, well, that's good. If you prefer to be in a long-term relationship and that is good for your soul, and that is good nurturing for you, well, that's fine. And if it's too triggering or there's too much fear of rejection at this time for you to go in a relationship, well, it's also fine, and people should not judge you for that.
Right.
You will go in a relationship when you feel ready, when you feel like this is really what you want, not out of desperation or to fill a void or to feel complete or to feel recognized by others. It's like, it's everything we have to keep in mind, really, because there's suffering with being single. There's comparison. We compare ourselves, like, are we less than? Are we desirable? Are we a good person? Why don't anybody choose me? Well, I don't think it's a good mindset to go in a relationship. And I think we should start to construct ourselves, really, like we said in the beginning, on our own. First and foremost, on our own.
It's kind of like, you know, sculptors, they take away the external part to create the finished piece. They see it, you know, presenting itself, and we are whole. We think we're not whole sometimes, but we actually are. And so if we can just shed all of that, all the stuff that people are saying about us and to us and what we're saying to ourselves, and just shed all that stuff, because there's that beautiful, beautiful core that we have. And that's why we have people who care about us. And that's why we care about each other and ourselves. It's there. We are complete, whole, beautiful people right as we are right in this moment. Even scared, even grieving.
Yeah, we're enough. We're enough as we are right now. And today it's together that we're enough, my friend.
Merci bien, mon ami. Thank you for always.
Thank you to you, my friend, Kate.
Thank you for this conversation.
So thank you, everybody, for being with us today. It was really a pleasure to share these thoughts with you who are all across the world. Oh, this is quite something, Kate. And we will add at the bottom of this conversation different links to groups, to websites, to books about the experience of being single and childless also. So we'll be happy to share that with you also. And we hope this would be a great help for you in trying to reframe yourself in the society and the expectations you put on yourself and the expectation the society puts on yourself also. So to create better boundaries for yourself and more, at the end of the day, more self-care.
Very well said. Thanks to all.
So thank you, Kate, and love you, and hope we'll see each other very soon, my friend.
I hope so as well. Thank you.
Thank you.